Good morning. Coffee Conversations with Greg J is on. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Today's going to be a great day. Keep your eyes and ears to the light because we need it, man, to be honest with you. Thursday. Summertime, right? Getting your summer body ready. Hit these beaches, lakes, and all that, wherever you are, what you do for summer. There's a lot on our minds, on our consciousness these days. We're preparing to go and preparing ourselves to go to the polls. We're preparing ourselves for social change. And not preparing, reacting, I guess, or contemplating social change, cultural revolution in this country. We're worried, we're stressed, we're seeing a lot of violence happening in our streets. Thank you if you tuned in on Tuesday live where we had Craig DeLuce, Sacramento, school board member. He's also a very enthusiastic gun rights advocate, which was a very interesting conversation. And then we contrast him with our good friend LaWanda Hawkins, who heads an organization called Justice for Murdered Children. And you know what I found out about that is that we really need to continue this dialogue and get information from the experts, and so that we know what we're dealing with here as we continue to hear the news of, mass shootings and the politicians railing about gun control and gun rights and all this stuff that's going on. Every time you turn on your news, you're hearing this stuff. We're bombarded with it. Tragic shooting last week at the school down in Uvalde, Texas, Robb Elementary. 21 people, right? 19 children, 2 teachers. Before that, the church down there in Laguna Hills, just south of here where we originate in Long Beach, just, probably about a 30-minute drive down the road there. We'll be there. Guy goes in there. He's mad because the Taiwanese versus the Chinese, and he's angry, so he shoots at church. Same weekend, the white supremacist goes into the supermarket in the black community and shoots up the place, kills 10 people. We learned out of the conversation the other day, hey, man, Justice for Murdered Children says, hey, they do the crime, do the time. Stop letting them out too early. Craig DeLuce says, yeah, law and order. This is what we need to do. LaWanda says, put more school police. And I'm going to tell you something, with the headlines that have been hitting just since Tuesday, I hear her saying it in my heart, in my consciousness. I hear her say, no, we need to put the school police back in the LA Unified. That's what she was saying, And you have to respect her position, right? Because she's got the front row seat, the epicenter of victims. So anyway, what about the legal system, right? That's what we're talking about today. Crime and punishment. It's such a violent world. I know them cats are busy down there at the courthouse, seems like. Let's find out. Got a new friend. You know how we do it here, Coffee Conversations with Greg J. I'm not the expert. I'm just the homie over here facilitating, reaching all over the globe to get people who are experts in their area to give us compelling conversation about the topics that are at hand. And today, we've got a public defender here, LA County. Patrick Hare, good morning.
Morning. Pleasure to be with you, Greg.
Good pleasure to be with you today. Man, first of all, how you doing? How's your family? You surviving these crazy times? How you feeling?
We're making it through.
Mm.
Blessed to have a wonderful wife that's incredibly supportive, and our parents are still with us, and
Mhm.
we've made it through the pandemic and are able to spend time with them. So grateful for that.
All right. There it is. Well, shoot, you're a public defender. That means you're on the front line of things here, defending people, and you hear, the cases as laid out on paper, and you adjudicate those in our courtrooms. Now that you're seeing all of this violence, and Patrick, I don't know if you know, just as you and I were checking in pre-show, the headlines are coming. They told students at a school out in the valley to stay home because they found graffiti where somebody is threatening to shoot up the school. And I noticed that yesterday evening when I was driving to an event, I was listening to the news radio station, and I got to tell you, the top four, because I counted them, the top four lead stories were about how they had arrested one young person. They had others where they saw on their social media, and then they saw messages in the bathroom on the school. All of these were situations where threats were made to inflict shooting harm on the students. Stricter sentencing, or what's our solution, man? It's crazy.
The United States seems to be the only democratic country that thinks the solution to our gun problem is even more guns. We've been flooding the market with guns for decades, and the oft-quoted mantra of the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun is a complete failure, as is mass incarceration. When I started practicing as an attorney over 30 years ago, there was a beginning of draconian sentencing laws here in California. There was a 3 strikes laws, and there was enhancements for people that were considered to be gang members. Of course, it was primarily targeted towards the poor and people of color. There was very draconian sentences for the use of a gun, including up to 25 years to life. Yet, with all of these guns flooding the market and with all of these draconian sentencing laws, it hasn't stopped the problem. It's only got worse. We've got to start thinking outside the box. We've got to get over our own obsession with more and more guns and take a look at some neighboring countries. Take a look at Canada. Take a look at the UK. Take a look at Australia and see what are they doing and why don't they have the problem of mass shootings that we do in this country. Now, of course, the reasons for that are complex and social, as well as tied into the proliferation of guns. But the fact that we have so many guns is indeed part of the problem, and we need to revisit the issue of who can have guns and what kind of guns they can have.
Really interesting. You mentioned Canada. Prime Minister Trudeau yesterday suspended sales of all handguns, just we got to check ourselves. And then not New Zealand, after their shooting a couple of years ago, they just banned, I guess, certain types of weapon sales altogether. Just said, forget it. No, and just suspended all of that. And she was able to do that without her parliamentary, approval and everything. She has a little more authoritative powers than the process is a little more direct for her as the head of state in New Zealand than it is here in the United States, right? But they say guns don't kill people, people kill people. Would you agree to that?
People with guns kill people, and people that have
Mhm.
access to guns, particularly guns with high capacity magazines, have the capacity to kill many, many more people than people that don't have guns.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Man, I mean, it's really, really, really something. I mean, I mean, would the courts, I mean, we're really speculating right here, right? So how would the courts go about even adjudicating if they were to put controls on guns and stop the flow of guns, retard the flow of guns. How would you enforce those laws inside of the courtroom?
Well, let me back up just
Mm.
a bit, if I may. First of all, let me say for the record that I am not anti-gun. I grew up hunting. I keep in storage, but I have a Winchester 308 and a Browning 30-06. They were hunting rifles. We learned how to use them. We took hunter safety courses, but we knew what they were for and what they were not for. These were tools that we use to go out and supplement our food supply growing up. My father was a machinist, worked second jobs, and anytime we had the opportunity to supplement our family pantry and refrigerator, it was of great benefit to us. So I am not anti-gun by any means. Also, we need to take a hard look at the Constitution and put the Second Amendment in its proper context. The Second Amendment itself says that a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So we need to remember that our hallowed Constitution puts the right to bear arms in the context of maintaining a well-regulated militia. The people that are going into our temples, our churches, our schools are in no way part of a well-regulated militia. Historically, the states were allowed to have regulations on who could have guns. Back in 1876, the Supreme Court in United States versus Crookshank gave the states the powers to regulate possession of firearms. And that was lasted quite a while until recently in the Heller case in 2008, the Supreme Court in a very narrow decision, 5-4, said that the United States, the federal government, the Second Amendment doesn't allow the states to limit the possession of weapons, but that was 5 votes to 4. And we know from the Roe v. Wade decision that we're anticipating to come down that things can change. The dissenters in that decision disagreed. They believe that the Second Amendment is primarily designed to protect the rights of each state to maintain a well-regulated militia. So I think down at the local levels, there's not a whole lot that judges can do other than enforce sentencing laws for possession or use of firearms, but it's a bigger problem. We can't solve it by individual school teachers handling guns. We can't solve it by state court judges handing out sentences. We've got to deal with it on a holistic, systemic level. It needs to start with reevaluating what the Second Amendment means and what it doesn't mean. And it's got to start with reasonable regulations of who can have firearms and when and where and why.
It's interesting. Tuesday's discussion, we did explore, the notion of teachers having weapons. And I was like, wow, we're going to turn this into the wild, wild west. That's not the answer, is it?
No, and I don't think any country where quote unquote freedom is ensured by more and more military forces in our schools, in our churches, in our community centers, in our temples and sanctuaries, that is not the sort of freedom that is appealing to me.
Ready to move up out of here, right? So that's wow. It's very much a very deep and emotional contemplation as we sit here and we keep watching. Someone is on Twitter this morning is saying, okay, something is going on in this country where we're seeing so much violence and I mean, violence over the top, people going into these mass shootings and all that. But let's just talk about even with the gang violence and criminal behavior. I mean, when I see on TV, they make a big bust. They show all the dope on the table, big wads of cash, and then always with that are tremendous arsenals that folks are getting out here on the street. How are they getting these weapons, and does the legal system how can the legal system help slow down that flow of arms into our communities?
It's got to stop with the manufacturing and importing. It's just flooding our communities. I mean, as in the criminal courts, we can only deal with it after the problem has already happened. We don't get to process these guns before it goes into the hands of young men and whose moral compasses aren't well formed. Who often are in difficult social circumstances. The courts don't presently have the opportunity to stop those guns from getting into the hands of those that are not using them responsibly. So we're left trying to clean up the mess after the crimes have already happened. We got to deal with the problem at the source, not try and do a little pruning around the edges after the problem is manifested itself.
It was suggested as we were seeking solutions in our contemplations that maybe, the sentencing, people need to do the time, so if one gets sentenced to 10 years, he might be out for in 3, or Miss Hawkins from Justice for Murdered Children shouted out the fact that, hey, you could get arrested at 6 in the morning, have guns and everything, and be out by 3. What's up with that? How do we fix those types of situations? And is that type of situation a threat to our security in the community?
Well, again, the proliferation of guns is absolutely a threat. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the mass incarceration that we've been attempting is not the solution. I mean, it may keep one person off the street for a period of time, but our population is growing. There's more and more guns out on the street, and the social conditions that are leading to this problem are not being addressed. We're putting a Band-Aid on someone that's bleeding out from their jugular vein. I mean, it's just too little, it's too late. We've got to take a hard look at the social issues that are leading to these problems in the first place, and couple that with cutting off the supply of guns to all these neighborhoods.
Yeah, it's there's just a lot now. All right, so you're a public defender. I'm looking at you. I've got to tell you something. If I were to profile you, you don't look like a public defender. You look like a private practice, big baller, corporate lawyer to me, because they give us the imagery, the optics of the public defender that's always frazzled, they're overwhelmed, big caseload. What's your caseload like?
Well, I'm the supervisor of 3 courts: the felony arraignment court, so downtown. So all of the new felony cases that are coming through, I work there and I oversee that. I work in the early disposition court, where courts try and thin out our massive caseload by offering incentives for people charged with crimes to resolve their cases early. So that saves money to the taxpayers. It prevents witnesses from having to come into court. And I work in the master calendar court. 2 things happen there. First of all, when cases are ready to get sent out for trial, they get funneled through the master calendar court. And then one other thing that happens there that I do on a daily basis is I help people get their convictions reduced, if it's a felony, reduced to a misdemeanor, get their convictions expunged, get their prison commitments, issue certificates of rehabilitation so they can be pardoned by the governor. So I see people on a daily basis on the other side of the criminal justice system that have turned their lives around and have redeemed themselves. So that's a part of the job that's very fulfilling and life affirming for me.
Oh, so you said, Greg J, I'm the boss. That's good. So let me ask you this question. And this is probably abstract to where I really wanted to go, but I'm just curious, just because here in Long Beach, where we originate from, we're working on a story now that comes under the category of social equity, and that's the cannabis industry. It's a big deal, right? And then you see in municipalities all over the state and probably all over the country where there's inequities in this business category where people of color want to have the licenses, but they're, cost prohibitive and thus and so. Just a lot of stuff going on. But under that discussion, that public discussion is, okay, what about the folks that were locked up in the penitentiary because they were selling weed and now weed is legal and it's an industry? They're still in prison. What do we do with that? So what's your take on that whole discussion?
Well, yeah, and we do a lot of work in that area. People that were serving time for possession of, for personal use. That used to be a felony, that used to be subject to third strike sentencing. We'd have people that had a rock of cocaine that were being sentenced to 25 years to life. And now that the laws have changed, we're going back through, we're getting those sentences reduced. But at the same time, I think we ought to take stock of the moral and social cost that those sentencing laws took on the people, not only the people that were serving the time, but their spouses, their children. They were losing their jobs. Their families were being broken up. They were being displaced from their housing. And then their children are left again without one of their parents. And the social cost of our quote unquote war on drugs, which is primarily a war on the poor and a war on people of color, is devastating. And we have to take a really hard look at how do we compensate these communities for the incredible damage that we've done.
I mean, it's it's a big deal. You should 10 years ago, 15 years ago, somebody gets busted, gets sentenced to years and years and years, and then all of a sudden it's what you were dealing in is legal.
Yeah.
How does that happen? It's interesting. I met this guy. We're really into the crypto space. So we were at this conference, and the guy, one of the sponsors and one of the panelists was the CEO of this major cannabis company. And he started talking about their farms. And this guy had property in 3 states, man. And it's like, okay, you don't just get that like in a snap of a finger and all of that, How do you even define, I'm speculating that maybe this person or persons associated with them held those farms while it was illegal, because I'm thinking you need to build up to that type of capacity. What's the technicality for a person who farms or manufactures whatever, the marijuana? Back in the day, they got their property when it was illegal, and now it's legal. Is there anything holding them up from getting properly accredited?
I don't practice in the area of licensing of who can and who can't have these farms. So I can't speak to that, but I will say, somewhat tongue in cheek, that of course this people getting wealthy by illegal or immoral gains has been sadly part of the narrative of this country forever. For so many profiting and building up our national wealth on the back of slavery. You think back to the robber barons, the people that have profited from, paying people not even a living wage, and
Mhm,
profiting off of that. People that
mhm,
were
mhm,
profiting from uh, running liquor during the prohibition. So,
mhm,
sad to
mhm.
say, people benefiting from engaging in illegal and immoral activity has been a major thread of our American narrative from day one.
Man said it's the American way. So wow, yeah, yeah, it's a really, really something. All right, so now I'm looking at you. I'm This is a burning question in my heart. How often do you go into, like, what's your typical day like? Are you going into the jails, into the belly of the beast, and what type of people are you meeting? And what is, when you do that in your day to day, if you do that in your day to day, let me say it like that. What touches your heart
Hmm.
the most, like,
Mhm.
that makes you like, "Damn, this is why I do this. I gotta stand up for this situation."
Wow, that's a beautiful question, and thank you for asking that. And if I may reflect over the course of my career rather than limiting it to what I'm just doing now.
Mhm.
But and you talked how I looked like a corporate lawyer. I worked for a big law firm for one summer in the middle of law school and absolutely hated it. And I thought, oh no, what have I got myself into? And then my very last year of law school, I worked for the equivalent of the public defender's office in Boston. And
Mhm.
instead of just being a small cog in a huge wheel of large corporations suing each other, I had real life clients whose lives were entrusted to my care and in my hands. And there was real life people with stories that I found out about that I had the opportunity to help. So that's what led me to become a public defender now
Mhm.
over about 33 years ago. So one of my um, campaign slogans in my run for the judge of the Superior Court this year is that justice shouldn't look different in Inglewood than it does in Brentwood. And
Mhm.
so there's so much, it's such a systemic issue. It starts with what laws get passed, and we've seen where back in the day when the Chinese were targeted by the special sentences for opium, which the Chinese used rather than drugs that the white folks were using, or crack cocaine versus powdered cocaine. So there's a lot of systemic injustice that's built into the laws that are passed. And then there's a question of enforcement. I mean, we know
Mhm.
that the wealthy in Brentwood and Beverly Hills are using as much fentanyl and cocaine back in the day as anyone else, but those
Mhm.
aren't the communities that are being targeted. All
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
resources are being poured into the poor communities. And then
Mm.
after the arrest is made, do you get a warning or do you get taken into the station? The case gets handed over to the prosecuting agencies. Does it go to
Mm.
the city attorney to be treated as an infraction or a misdemeanor, or does it go to a district attorney to treat it as a felony? If the person has priors, do you allege them or not? And these
Mhm.
are all aspects of systemic injustice that have all taken place behind the scenes, out of the view of the public eye, before a case ever comes to court. So it was those sorts of deep injustices that really touched my heart and made me want to work to stand up against those, as well as the fact that so many people that I see in the arraignment court on a daily basis uh, are poor, often struggling with substance abuse issues or untreated mental health issues or
Mhm.
suffering from homelessness. If someone gets a prison jacket, then suddenly they can't get Section 8 housing, they can't get
Mhm.
jobs, and what else are they supposed to do? So
Mhm.
until we are committed as a society to providing basic human needs for all of our citizens, housing, medical treatment, substance abuse treatment, mental health treatment, uh, job opportunities, we're going to continue to see the dysfunction that we see on a daily basis every
Mhm.
day.
Mhm. 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 Wow, profound, 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 profound. Now, outside of your own caseload, what's the case in the state? I know you all talk to each other and everything. What's the case in the state everybody's watching and talking about?
Well, tragically, I didn't tune in myself, but I mean, everyone was all obsessed with the lives of an actor and his ex-wife, and that why
Johnny
that
Depp and
got as
them.
much press as it did, I have no idea. But we seem to be obsessed with the problems of famous people. But it's the plight of the people that don't make it onto television. The literally thousands of lives that are neglected, abandoned, thrown away, that are what touch my heart.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You mentioned that trial. I was like, after I heard the verdict, my tweet was, "Okay, Johnny Depp, now can you please excuse yourself from my news feed? It's ridiculous. Not a time for us to be peeking in." Same with the beef between Monique and DL Hughley. We really don't have time for this. There's too much serious situations all around us, and we got to get a handle on this stuff, folks. Let's not get distracted. We got to get a handle on this stuff and and make ourselves safe. It's just exceedingly dangerous now, and I think when we had our analysis, if you will, of the electorate that is before us, we had 3 or 4 pundits, and we covered Southern California pretty well as the state. We had state perspective as well, looking at different races and different issues that are before us. And, we identified 2 obvious number 1 issues that would be on any candidate's plate, and that would be homelessness and crime. And so we began to talk about safety. And it's interesting, we want safety, we want guns off the street and all of that, but at the same time, we're living in fear. We went to the movies the other day to see Top Gun. Maverick went to the movies, first time going to the movie theater in 2 years. And I got to be honest with you, I'm sitting in there waiting for the movie to start, but I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm side-eyeing everybody that's walking in there. I'm looking at the exits, man, so I was thinking, shoot, maybe I need to strap up before I go to the movie so I can protect myself, but Lord of mercy, crime and punishment in a violent world. Your job is tough, isn't it there, Mr. Patrick?
Well, yeah, it's a never-ending supply of cases coming through. Let me tell you the things that give me hope, and that is there's been a movement across our country towards what's called restorative justice, and there's been a movement towards what is called the collaborative courts. For so long, our legal system has been premised on the adversarial system, where we have winners and losers, and someone is either found not guilty and they walk out the door. Perhaps they had some criminal culpability, but they walk out without any repercussions, without anything happening socially to address the problems that put them there in the first place, or they're convicted and sent away for a long period of time. You have winners and losers, but I've been very excited about the movements that started in the Bronx and in the Bay Area, and we're adapting it here in Los Angeles. They're called the collaborative courts, where instead of 2 sides fighting each other for winning and losing, they're working together. So the district attorneys and the city attorneys and the public defenders and the Department of Mental Health and the sheriff and the probation department and housing and substance abuse experts all coming together saying, you know what, warehousing someone in a metal and steel cage is not the way forward here. We need to address the circumstances that have led them there in the first place and bring about healing so that they don't end up doing that again the very next day after they get out of the cage that we put them in for 1 year or 10 years or 20 years. So it's those sorts of collaborative justice, working towards restorative justice, that continue to give me hope in the midst of all the brokenness that we see on a daily basis.
Patrick, you were talking about mass incarceration, the war on drugs, and all of that. more than 30 prisons all up and down California. It's crazy, it's almost like it's almost like they're preparing the children for future incarceration if you look at the structures and just the whole spiritual vibe, right, of the state. I like to tell the story of the time I was going fishing and headed out towards Blythe, California, to Colorado River, and I see these lights because I leave at like 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning to get out there, and I see these lights in the horizon in my windshield. I'm like, oh, there's a town, but I don't see a town on my map. It's a penitentiary in the middle of the doggone desert. It's like, oh my goodness, man, they must put like the worst of the worst out there. That's that Ironwood and Chuckwalla Valley penitentiaries, and who thinks of the stuff where to put the prisoners, and is it really the worst of the worst like you see on television, or what's the real life situation? Are people just good people who have taken a wrong turn that might be out of desperation, got to do what you got to do? Or is it just we live in Mad Max world?
Yeah, well, I refuse to believe we're in Mad Max world, nor do I tend to, by and large, divide the world up into good people and bad
Mm,
people, where
mm,
there's just us. And some
exactly.
of us make bad decisions in uh, dire circumstances. But as I've often said, that none of us should be defined by the worst thing that we've ever done. So there's
Mm,
going back to the gun rights. People say that you stop a bad man with a gun with a good man with a gun, but there is none of us that are entirely bad or entirely good. When
mhm,
a good person with a gun in the wrong circumstances on the wrong day in the wrong emotional state of mind could easily cross the line. So
mm,
we've got to find ways to help people that, as a result of the social circumstances that they find themselves in, have made antisocial choices. We've got to work together. I've been very inspired by some of the prison systems that they have in Europe, where people live in apartment settings and they have jobs and they are getting training and they have stores in the facility where they go shop and they prepare their own meals. They contribute to the community. Their families can visit with them. In other words, this is an environment where they're living and staying that is helping to form the character qualities that we're going to need them to have when they are released back into the community at large, as opposed
mm,
to our current prison system where people are treated like rats in a cage. They're not
mm,
allowed to make any decisions. They're cut off from community and meaning and all the things that uh, make for stable, healthy human beings, and they're treated like worse than animals. There's a lot
mm,
more movements these days towards better living conditions for animals in the zoos than there is for people that are spending decades in prison, coming out completely traumatized, coming out
mm,
without having had any sort of significant efforts put into healing them. So
mm.
I think we need to look to other countries, get over our obsession with ourselves, and start looking to other countries for what is working on the gun issue there, what is working in the area of criminal justice that really brings about a true healing. I care deeply about victims. I get a police report and I see that someone was robbed or had their home burglarized. And of course, as a human being, we all have empathy and we care deeply and feel the pain of the person that was a victim in that case. And absolutely, our criminal justice system has to help the healing of those that have been that are the victims in crimes. But we also need to address significant resources to the offenders to make sure that these things don't happen again.
I'm really glad that you brought up your global perspective because we here at Coffee Conversations with Greg J and indeed Dream Creator Studio and Hannibal Media Group, we are a global company. We are about building bridges of music, arts, and culture with Africa and America. And that's really at our center. We always expand our lens to a global perspective. And it's interesting that you watch and you see and observe what happens outside of this country. And I think what you just said, we got to get over our obsession with ourselves. That what flashed in my mind when you said that just now was the time I was traveling to Africa for a music awards show, and the World Cup of rugby was going on. And as this was going on, the United States was getting ready to play South Africa. So my phone is blowing up from texts and stuff from my friends in, in South Africa. They're trash talking. It's like, we're going to beat you, United States. And I'm like, wait, United States got a team? But when I got on that plane and I reached, so I had to fly from LAX to Dubai and then Dubai into Durban, South Africa. When I landed in Dubai, and then again in Durban, South Africa, let me just tell y'all, the Rugby World Cup was the event happening everywhere you looked. It's like, we're not even hearing this in the United States. I mean, everywhere, like the Super Bowl hype, rugby hype, it's a big freaking deal. And we just got to get over ourselves. I was at a bar one time in South Africa, and we were talking about soccer because I was trying to learn it because that's what they do over there. And the guy at the bar says, you Americans think you're all that. He says, how do you call your teams world champions and you don't play the world? And I'm like, dang, so you're absolutely right. We've got to get over our obsession with ourselves.
You were mentioning going back into the theater. I was just in the theater last week, and I saw this beautiful documentary called Jazz Fest, which of course is about the New Orleans Jazz Fest. But it's been horrible, and I didn't grow up in California, but moving down here and with the property tax reform, where the budget for the arts in the schools has just been decimated, and there's all this focus on STEM, which is great for some kids and leaves other kids on the sidelines. And I think, watching that movie and seeing community and food and music and dance, I think community and arts are going to play a critical role in our healing if we're ever to get there.
All right, let's go there. Oh, you know what? I didn't know this about you. I love this. Okay, so I am the vice president and president-elect of the Arts Council for Long Beach. And so I am an arts advocate. Okay. And now I'm going to share what you just said is so at my center right now. How can the legal system, the judicial system, and an arts advocate community link up together to funnel more resources and programs into the arts?
Wow, now that's a big question outside the box. During my campaign, I have been going out and meeting with many different groups throughout the community to learn about the issues that face all of us in Los Angeles. One of my core beliefs is that we need judges that have 1 foot in the courtroom, that are well versed in the practice of law, but 1 foot in the community as well. And by the community, I don't mean the country club or the gated community. I think judges need to be intimately aware of what is going on in South Los Angeles and East Los Angeles and Monterey Park. So one of the great blessings of this campaign has been meeting with people that are really working on issues of restorative justice. So I met with Robert Saucedo of Community Build in South Los Angeles, where they're working with people when they get out of the prison system. How can we provide housing for you? How can we provide life skills for you? How can we reintegrate you into the life of your children that were babies when you went to prison and now are teenagers? And how are we going to renegotiate what that relationship looks like? And I haven't connected enough with the arts communities to that end. Although I'm a member of the LA chapter of the Gospel Music Workshop, so I love to sing gospel music and love jazz, love opera. So I think the court system needs to get out of the box that we've been in, where if your only tool is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. We've got to get out of the mindset that for any violation of the law, the answer is always incarceration. And we need to find out about these sort of creative community organizations that are providing community and meaning and hope for people in their lives, and start integrating those sorts of programs. So yeah, I mean, I'd love to have continue the conversation with. Let's get some organizations that are involved in the arts that we can refer some of these lost souls to help them find themselves and find meaning and purpose. That would be fantastic.
This is divinely ordered, because one of our close friends is Robert Saucedo, and we've been actually through this very program. We've had since the beginning of the year a series where we're dealing and examining the creative economy, and we're focusing. Our intent was initially to focus on African Americans in classical music, and we've had people from the LA Phil on. We've had the folks rebuilding the Vision Theater. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. And soon we'll be having Lula Washington from the Dance Theater out there to come on. And we're just examining this. And then since I've been a part of the Arts Council for Long Beach, and since I've been on the executive committee, I really have been looking at the business of arts, and how do we as arts organizations and how do artists access the financial resources that are available, or how do we continue to advocate so that more arts organizations can thrive. You mentioned the STEM programs, and now I hear a lot of educators correcting me and saying, no, it's STEAM, because you have to add arts to that acronym, So now it's STEAM is what we need to do. I just met someone on our board of directors for the Arts Council who is a scientist by trade, and her whole thing is she can share with you and correlate science with your art. It's real. I don't have the words yet. I need to meditate on how she does that. But it makes a lot of sense when you're talking to her, and you could see the science in, arts creation. You mentioned all of those post penitentiary needs, right? I saw at the Annenberg up there in Century City a program and I think it's run by the California Arts Council, I believe, but they are very active in teaching arts to prisoners, and they see this as a strong asset towards what they call rehabilitation. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I saw a documentary a while ago on a gentleman that went into the prison, and was teaching them Shakespeare and helping them. I mean, as an actor, you need to tap into your own soul, your inner emotional core, and helping these prisoners go inside and find some of the brokenness, and then to be able to release that through the arts rather than through violence. It's very, very powerful.
All right. So now you are. I just want to go there real quick. You did mention you're running for judge, and so we want our people. We pride ourselves on being apolitical. And we love when we do have candidates come on, it always is in the form of this type of conversation. We just want to get to know you, chop it up with you. Let's just dialogue. Let's get past your posters and your campaign speeches and all that. Let's just have coffee and really just chop it up about the issues that are at hand. And I think results in, meaningful dialogue for people who may be seeking public office. And us here, what we advocate is we want everybody to vote. Don't just sit it out, because, get out there. But doggone it, when I get to the doggone judges section, I haven't heard any of y'all, so I just, that's not the way to go, is it?
No, it's unfortunate, because I think people are beginning to realize that, particularly with the nomination and thank God the confirmation of Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, that it really matters who is sitting on our courts. Now, the challenge of a judicial campaign is we don't have the sorts of resources to get out there on television or whatever other media. So it's hard to spread the word. Now, you will find in it. I know voters, they have lives, and they can't take up a full-time job of investigating every candidate for every seat and every proposition. So, but there are resources that you can turn to with respect to judges. The Los Angeles County Bar Association does a very thorough vetting process, and you can find out if a particular candidate has been rated well qualified or not qualified. You can go to your local newspapers, the LA Times, the Daily Breeze, the Long Beach Press Telegram, Pasadena Star News, and they also have gone through a vetting process. So when I met with the LA Times, I had a nice thorough interview with them. It was clear that they had done their homework of preparing for their interview with me. Likewise with the Long Beach Press Telegram, Pasadena Star News, there was a long, extensive application that we had to fill out and send to them so that they would have a basis to make their decision. So most all the candidates have websites and where they will list the individuals that have endorsed them, the judges that have endorsed them, political groups, etc. So if you have the time, you can go to their websites and get kind of a snapshot. You can go to the LA County Bar, find out what their ratings are, and go to the various political clubs, whether you're Republican or Democrat. You can go to the Los Angeles County Democratic Party or Los Angeles County Republican Party and see what their recommendations are. So you don't have to do all the work yourself. You can go to sources that you trust. I know every 2 years at election time, I'm getting phone calls, text messages, emails from all of my friends saying, okay, who do we vote for judge? So it can be challenging, but there actually are resources that with just a little bit of work, you can find some help in making these very important decisions. All right. This year, there are 6 public defenders running for judge. And in the history of Los Angeles County, no public defender, currently a public defender, has ever been elected judge. Typically, the district attorney's office was the pipeline to the bench. So it's going to be interesting to see if the LA County voters are ready to diversify the perspective of the bench.
That would mean fundamental change, like you mentioned earlier. I thought it was interesting you called it. It's like, okay, we change it. What do you call it? Reformative justice?
Yeah, reformative justice. Yes, an emphasis on the sort of justice that restores our communities to wholeness for victims, absolutely, but also for those accused of crimes as well.
All right. So when I look at my ballot, I see. So you're what, number 151, Judge?
Yes, office number 151.
So is that the number, like, and I go in the courthouse and it says department, is it that number, or does this just identify?
It's just a number to keep track of what seats are open. So I'm running to replace the retiring Judge Morton Rockman. He's the longest serving judge in Los Angeles County, and he actually was a public defender himself before he was appointed, not elected, but appointed by the governor many years ago. But so every 2 years, about 1/3 of the bench is up for re-election, and the judges that decide to retire, that creates what is called an open seat. So there are 6 open seats this year, and there's about 20 of us running for those open seats. And then there's 3 races where one or more attorneys have decided to challenge a sitting judge. So in 6 of the races, you'll have attorneys, public defenders, district attorneys, private attorneys running against each other. And in 3 races, you'll have attorneys running against a currently sitting judge.
All right. So when you win, notice I said when you win,
where
will your courtroom be?
That is up to the presiding judge. So you could be sent anywhere from Lancaster to Long Beach, from Santa Monica to Pomona, or all parts in between. And it also, not everyone's going to be a criminal judge. We have judges in family law court and unlawful detainer and traffic court and dependency court. So not everyone that's running for judge is going to end up in a criminal court, but yeah.
So that's what I was going to ask you. So if I get a ticket, I might be, I might see you.
I'd have to recuse myself because I'd say, well, Greg is my good friend. I had coffee with him a while ago, and
because I got a ticket one time. I went to Santa Monica court, and doggone it if the former mayor of LA was not the judge.
Huh.
And I was like, wow, how does that happen? James Hahn, he was I was just trying to figure out, how did that happen? Did he run for judge after he
Well, he might have been sometimes the judges will have you serve as a temporary judge, or as a commissioner. So there are people that I don't think he's, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty confident he's not currently sitting on the Superior Court, but attorneys can be appointed to act as judges.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Because he was up there. Charged me some money too. I voted for you. No. It's all funny stuff. All right. We're approaching the end of our time together. It's really been a blessing. I want to just kind of, you might have touched on it a little bit, but I do want to just kind of review it, because I always ask folks like yourself, what's the blessed hope? Like, what is the ultimate mission for Patrick Hare?
I think the mission for me is the mission for all of us, in that we realize that we are all in this together. It's been famously said that justice is what love looks like in public. And I'm hoping that we can all find within our hearts the collective will to rather than building more prisons and flooding our communities with more guns, that we commit our resources, our time, our best creative minds to really working to solve on a systemic basis the very deep issues that are affecting our communities.
Well, there we have it. Patrick Hare. Give me your website, sir. Let me put this in the chat so folks can check you out.
It's patrickhareforjudge.com, FOR.
Okay, hold on. FOR judge.com. All right, y'all. This is coming in the chat right now, just in case you want to, see what our friend is all about. See if he has earned your vote, or just know that you got great minds out there. It's not all bad in these legal hallways, and so I just think it's refreshing to hear someone's perspective about what's happening in the legal system. Okay, so there it is. I mean, if you haven't voted already, you can vote today if you want to. June 7th is the day. Just vote, man. Just vote. We need your right to be exercised at the ballot, at the polling place. Do it. Patrick Hare, I have 2 last questions. I heard you mention Boston. You pulling for the Celtics?
I'm taking the 5th. I grew up in Portland, and when I grew up, Portland, Oregon, and when I grew up, we didn't have when I was born, we didn't have basketball, we didn't have football, we didn't have professional hockey, we didn't have baseball. So it was just kind of, pick your team. And I will say that my loyalties have have changed over the years, and I support all the LA sport teams, and I've been to the Garden, and I've been to Fenway, and I love a good contest. At the end of the day, I want a game well played that goes right down to the finish. So,
but
I'll
you've
leave it
been
at
in
that.
LA all this time, practicing law and doing all the great things we have talked about in this past hour. You've got to be a Laker fan, and no Laker fan in their right mind can even root for the Boston Celtics.
I was there during the years of, Larry Bird and the rest of the company, and those games with the Lakers were the best. I mean,
Yes.
the rivalries don't get any better than that. And, what I loved is that Magic and Larry Bird, it was mutual respect. I mean, I don't buy, I don't buy into the hatred of other teams. And, to see two players play the game so well and hug and congratulate each other at the end of the game, no matter how it ends up, that's what I love about sports.
Yeah. That's the good stuff right there. All right, last question. I caught that you did it did not escape me that you're a singer and a music head right now. Okay, so what's in your music playing device?
Oh, and my music playing device, it's very diverse. I was very uh, um, Jean Baptiste, with the Grammys. I tend to be stuck, in the 60s or 70s or soul music or jazz music or gospel, and I don't always keep up. But I was thrilled to discover him this year. Next week I'm taking my wife to see the great band Chicago. We're also going to see Aida at the LA Opera. So my musical tastes are diverse.
Nice. Well, listen, knock them live during the election, and let's just keep up and keep this with each other and keep this dialogue, particularly about arts and culture, because we need minds like yours in the legal halls, but we need minds like yours out here advocating for the arts as we go through this, what we're calling recovery. The last 2 years have been really tremendous on all sectors, right? But we're advocating to the utmost that the system remembers arts and culture when they begin to provide the resources. We need to support. Look, you went to the opera, right? Or last week we went to the Long Beach Symphony as they did a tribute to Aretha Franklin. We know the Long Beach Opera is getting ready to come back out, and the LA Opera, the LA Phil, the Hollywood Bowl. Just support your performing arts in your community, the Lula Washingtons, the Debbie Allens. I mean, just Nate Holden, performing arts center, just on and on and on. Support arts, and we need people like Mr. Patrick Hare out there to help us out, advocate for us. Let's get it.
Greg, it was a pleasure meeting you, and loved the coffee and conversation. And yeah, would love to come down in Long Beach and follow up on these ideas about the importance of the arts and their role in the criminal justice system. Really thrilled about that.
You got a deal, sir. And I'm supposed to be talking to Mr. Saucedo soon, so I'm gonna let him know. Look, I met the homie. Good stuff. Thank you, Patrick, for coming through, man.
Thank you so much.
All right, peace and blessings. All right, y'all. If y'all want to check this whole thing out, you can do so on our page, which is Coffee Conversations with Greg J. That's on Facebook. We're also on the YouTube. Just go ahead and search Coffee Conversations with Greg J. You'll find it. We're also going to repurpose the audio to put it out as a podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast: Spreaker, iHeart, Apple, Google, where else? Spotify, all those little platforms. Just put it in there. Coffee Conversations with Greg J will come up. All right, y'all. Love one another. Love one another.
Amen.
Love one another. Peace and blessings.